everyone. My name is Chaz Mulder, and I'm the mayor of the city of Columbia. I'd like to welcome everyone who's here and call to order the joint study session with the City Council and the City of Columbia Planning Commission. Many of you remember that we had a similar meeting, almost eerily similar, not too long ago between these two bodies that provided a good opportunity to have some good conversations. I think there were some really good takeaways from that joint meeting. And today we get to see the actual sort of fruits of the labor on what is going to be proposed tonight on the joint zoning ordinance and development code. So thanks to everyone for being here. I'm going to turn it over now to Development Services Director Paul Keltner for a brief introduction, and we'll look forward to hearing what everyone has to say. So thank you.
All right, thank you all for coming. As the mayor said, you did see a little bit of a brief introduction to this new zoning ordinance that we're proposing in front of you. This has been about a 1.5-year process from the very beginning of talks and funding until where we are today. Brian Wright with Town Planning Urban Design Collaborative was the consultants on this project and been working with us diligently for the past year just on the code textual part of it. And we're still working through it, and we'll continue to work through it until the point that everybody's comfortable with the project. So if I could, I'll just turn it over to Brian.
All right, thank you for letting us come talk to you tonight. Going to go through a presentation pretty quickly. It's high level. I know you all had a presentation not too long ago from us, kind of got into some of the weeds, but typically this presentation is more geared towards the community because this is their first time to see this as well. So some of what you'll see will be a repeat, but I'm pretty sure with the amount of information you got last time that you didn't memorize it all. And so what I was thinking is that as we go, we'll be able to once we get to the end, y'all may have some questions or comments or anything like that. But I understand that this is the first time you've gotten your hands on the document here, so that's so this is it on your table. All right. So this is an important slide. This is really important, especially for the community, and this is being recorded as well. So when I say the community, and there's not a full room of people in here. Hopefully there's people who are going to watch this at home that are also interested. But the way that I think about this image is you're not quite sure what's happening here. They could be, just sort of coming in, banking for a landing, or if you could see the look on their faces, they'd be maybe going, oh my gosh, what, as they're freaking out because things aren't going well on the plane. But what I find is when we go through a project like this, we're writing a new zoning ordinance for a city, we work all over the country. So we get to work with all kinds of places, all kinds of different things that they're interested in and things that are important to them. But when we open up the zoning ordinance to update it, people tend to have a lot of fear and anxiety about what's going on. And so I think about it like the airplane. When you get on an airplane, you need to know a few things. One, where are you going, right? So your ticket hopefully says the right thing on it. 2, what time's your flight, so you're not going to be late. Then 3, what seat you're sitting in, so you're not, get the good leg room and all that. And then maybe most importantly, where's the bathroom, right? But when you get to that seat of yours, and they say, if you look in the pocket in front of you, there's the sort of emergency preparation instructions, right? But it's not the manual for how to fly the plane. You trust that the people who are working to fly the plane and the ground crew and all the different people have made sure that that plane is ready to go and it's going to take you where you need to be safely. What I see a lot of times is when we open up the ordinance, as I said, there's that anxiety and people feel like they've got to learn everything there is to know about zoning in order to participate in the process so that they don't miss anything. And so my encouragement to all of the community is don't feel like you have to become an expert on zoning to go through this process. If there's something that's particularly relevant to you or important to you, something that has been, in the old zoning that caused a problem for you or that you've loved that you're, don't make sure that isn't lost, those are the things to focus on. You're welcome to, if you want to, become an expert on zoning and get all into it and all that, but if you see on the table, it's it's a thick document because there's a lot that you have to think through. So don't feel like you have to learn how to fly the plane just to get where you're trying to be. So comprehensive plan, you all have one. It is the high-level document that really sets that vision, the policy for the future, and everything kind of comes out from that, right, from the comprehensive plan. And so as we go through, we're looking at, what does the future of growth and development look like? What are the rules and regulations for that to make that, that vision that you have in your comprehensive plan come to fruition? So you have these guiding principles that include sense of place, safe and sound, a recreation hub, environmental stewardship, and connected Columbia. And so as we go through this and as you review the document, make sure you're always thinking about those high-level things. They seem very high level, but as you evaluate what's in the zoning ordinance, those are the things where you say, like, did we get it right or not? And that's going to be really important as you go. You have also within the comprehensive plan some very specific recommendations that are specifically related to zoning, and so those are the ones as well. So it talks about revising the PUD process and the adoption process, talks about consolidating and streamlining the framework, and so it's not so complicated. Having revised design criteria that are focused on character and specific conditions. You'll hear a lot about character through this process and throughout the ordinance, and ensuring that infill is context responsive. So where that infill is, it feels like it fits in. You're not just getting something that's dropped in out of outer space. And then promoting a variety of housing types is also something that's talked about in the comprehensive plan. And so the way that this ordinance is written has set out to accomplish those goals as well. So in the comprehensive plan, it's set up with these different character zones, if you will. There's rural, suburban, and urban, and then they each are broken down. In the rural, there's the rural countryside, as well as these different special areas. You have in suburban neighborhoods, suburban corridor, employment districts, and some special areas. And these are all defined in the comprehensive plan. So for those who want to get more into it and understand the specifics of that, it's all in there. So take a look at that. And then urban, you have the urban neighborhood, urban corridor center, and special areas. So why update the code? And so as we got into this, we talked to different people. We met with policymakers. We talked to community members. And these are some of the things that we heard, some of the challenges of the current zoning. So too much emphasis on the PUDs, the planned unit development. And so that was something people were looking to get away from as much. Zoning isn't easy to use. It's not user friendly. There's so many parts that don't make sense together, contradictions and things. It's just sort of outdated, is what we've heard. And too many classifications or zoning districts. There were a lot of them, a lot of non-conformities that were in that. The connectivity and mobility aren't stressed enough because they're in the comprehensive plan. That's an important thing, and the zoning doesn't require that to happen. That it doesn't really focus or address the character. As I said, you have these character districts in your comprehensive plan, and the current zoning doesn't really sync up with them or anticipate that. And then it doesn't have the tools you need to accomplish the goals of the comprehensive plan, some of the bigger visionary things that are in there. So when we set forth to modernize a zoning ordinance, what do? We start looking at what are the most loved parts of the city. And so we want to protect those most loved parts. Obviously, in a place like this, and we heard over and over and over, downtown. This is our jewel. We all love downtown. And so that's obviously going to be important, more of a protective measure in downtown. Some areas we heard that need some improvement. So we want to enhance areas that need improvement. We heard, and this is nearly in every city we work in, what we hear, we don't know what's going to come out the other end of any zoning project. Somebody comes in, signs go up, rezoning, whatever. No one knows what to expect, so it really freaks out the community. Developers don't know what to expect either because they go through a process and have to, kind of, hey, what about this? Can we do that? Try again. And so really making sure that the outcomes are predictable for everybody is important. And then also creating something for everyone, the right place for everything. So a lot of times we're hearing from people, we're a community and we like 1 acre zoning, let's say, for instance. And Well, not everybody does. That may be your preference. That may be, so making sure that there's a multitude of different, places for people, because you've got people who are from here, who've lived here for generations, and, as they go through their life cycle, they have different preferences about where they live, how they live, et cetera. And then you have people who are moving in because y'all are so desirable in such a growing place, and they have different preferences as well. And so as we look, figure out how to do the zoning and how to honor what's in the comprehensive plan, making sure there's not a one-size-fits-all solution is really important. Talk about balancing the modes of transportation, and after you guys built your historic core, you pretty much went to a car-focused, car-only kind of approach. So everything outside the historic core, you have to get in your car for every single thing you go to, which then from there comes, shoot, what's all this traffic about? We're growing too fast, we're getting traffic and all that. It's not just necessarily the number of people that are coming here that are causing traffic. It's the development pattern that was used after you, kind of changed from what you were doing in the historic core. So there's some of that going on. Also thinking about zoning as an economic development tool. As I said, you all are a place where people are coming. Businesses are coming, people are moving their families here. Some people say, yeah, I know, that's a bummer. Other people say, yeah, this is great, and so just depending on what your feelings are about growth. But nonetheless, if you're gonna grow, let's make sure that you're growing in a way that really is economically enhancing the bottom line of the city. So we think about that as well. Always looking to make it easier to use and administer. That's from the staff's perspective, that's from the user, the developer's perspective, and also making sure that it's not just a professional developer who can use the zoning ordinance, right? We're working on one project right now, and instead of having setbacks, they have like percentage of the lot from the this and the center line of that or whatever. You literally have to do math to figure out where you're able to put your building. And that's just not user friendly. If you own a parcel and you want to do something with it, you have to go hire all kinds of professionals and spend a ton of money just to do a simple development on your property. And so making it more accessible to more people also can help make it more equitable. And then being consistent with the comprehensive plan, of course, as I said, that is the number one thing that's required. So thus far, we had our interdepartmental meeting. We had to start off with all the department heads in City Hall and said, hey, what's going on with zoning? How's it working for you? What are the issues? So we started, kind of really those who are using every day. We had our policymaker interviews, as I said, sitting down and talking and learning from the elected and appointed officials what's going on from their perspective and what their constituents are saying. We had our community kickoff meeting. Then we did our Planapalooza, and it was online. So we had people able to come in via Zoom. And through that Planapalooza process, we had our opening presentation, our hands-on workshop, 5 different technical meetings, the open studio where people could drop in at any time, and then a work-in-progress presentation. So we've had so far a good amount of opportunities for people to give input. Because even though for us, as I said, we work all around the country, but this, we're just up the road in Franklin. And so this is kind of a local project for us, but we still don't know this place like the community does. And so that's why we count on all of you and the citizens as well to let us know what's going on. And so for those who couldn't participate during the Planapalooza, we also have the webpage, and they've been going on and giving input on the webpage that we've been monitoring. We started by looking at the existing zoning districts before we really got started. Then we went out and did what we call synoptic surveying. So we actually measured and documented these areas that the community told us were their favorite places, the most loved parts of the city. And so we want to understand when we have a metric in the document that says here's this setback or this building height or these building types, it's not arbitrary. Because right now in every city in the country we work in, if you ask them why the numbers that are in the document in their zoning ordinance are what they are, people say, I don't know. Even if they've been here forever. Sometimes it's just, well, we downloaded that from the next town over when we adopted zoning the first time, and who knows. So anyway, we wanted to make sure that we understood the DNA of the places that people love the most in going forward. Then we also do a zoning translation. So we look at all of your zoning districts, of which there were many, and find are there opportunities to consolidate them. Is there over time the new zoning districts get added for this reason or that reason? Usually it's somebody's complaining about something their neighbor's doing, and so we're going to make a new zoning district to solve that problem, so we don't have to deal with that in the future. And so we originally had 21 districts in the old zoning, and the new zoning has 15, which is still a good number, but any shaving off you can do, the better. So those 15 districts break down like this, and CD, as you all heard in your last presentation, it stands for character district, right? So character district 2, rural, and so you'll see on these slides just underneath the title the existing zones that are consolidated into this new zone, and which of the comprehensive plan character areas are relevant to this. So we really wanted to make sure that we went through and understood what was going on in each of those districts as we laid it out. So when you're looking through the document, you'll see in the section that has all the character district standards, it will be broken down like this. So here's a CD2 rural, there's CD3 large lot, which is more suburban, larger lot as it says. Then getting into CD3, it's a little bit of a smaller lot. And so, but it has a lot of the same characteristics, predominantly single-family detached housing. Getting into CD4, Character District 4, that is kind of the most variety within that. So you have a pretty wide variety of building types. So you might have everything from single-family detached to row houses to some small-scale mixed-use or commercial uses. And then you'll start to really see it starts feeling even more walkable than some of the other zones. Getting into CD4C, so this has some of the same characteristics as that CD4 that I just talked about, but this is more along a corridor, so it might be a little bit more auto-focused, auto-oriented. And then getting into CD5, so this would be more like in the CBD areas of downtown. And so that's more about protecting and kind of keeping what you love about that. Then there's a CD5C, which is another corridor typology, but more intense than the CD4C as well. So this is kind of the coffee table version of that, the picture version, but when you get into it and you start studying it, these are the things you're going to be seeing in more detail. And then we have these different special districts. There's one that represents manufactured homes. There's the interstate special district, light industrial, and heavy industrial as well. And then there are some PUD districts as well. I mentioned earlier that we heard too much reliance on PUDs currently from the input we received. And so the thing that's great about the way that this zoning ordinance is written is that it actually allows for a lot of things to happen. It has specifically incorporated all of the vision from the comprehensive plan, and it makes it where you don't have to go ask to write your own zoning for every project, which is essentially what a PUD is. So you say, the zoning that's on the property doesn't work for me right now, and so I'd like to do something different than that, and so you go through a PUD process, if you're not familiar with that. So that's how that works. So they're still there, but they just probably would be pretty rarely used, would be the idea. And then that means that you have more predictable outcomes, as I said. That's one of the really good ways to have more predictability. Since each property zoning isn't simply just a negotiation as to what they can and can't do with their property. So, and then you also have this civic district as well that starts to deal with more public open spaces and things. So getting into the organization of the document, so we have Article 1, that's general, and that's kind of just the nuts and bolts of kind of laying out the, sort of the authority of the document and those sorts of things. Article 2 talks about the zoning map, how it works, what it is, and then we have Article 3, which are the zoning districts, as I just mentioned, goes through and explains all of those in more detail. Article 4 would be the building lot and building site standards. So those are the very specific things about each property, what you can do. Article 5 is the development parcel standards. So that's if you're doing development of larger size. And then you have supplemental standards that get into things that are, a lot of times will be cross-cutting, they'll be across different character areas, and so they fall into that. Sign standards as well, you know, they get their own section, as they do in nearly every city we work in. But, you know, in a lot of ways, the you know, focusing on the details of the signage will be important, because you have a lot of different characters within the city, and you want to make sure that with all the commercial growth and things you have, you get the signage dialed in. And then Article 8, the administration, procedures, and enforcement, and the definitions are Article 9. So it's pretty straightforward, these, you know, articles, but as you see, there's a lot to each of them. So be ready to go through it, and hopefully it's going to be easier to read than your old document. It's be more enjoyable to read. It's easier on the eyes for sure. But as you go through, you'll start to see within the different descriptions of the different character districts. You know, the standards are set up like this. You see, you know, the image. You have the description of what it's all about, and you go through, and hopefully it's very clear, very easy for you to understand. There's a use table that is it's quite robust, but at the end of the day, as opposed to your old zoning where the uses were the most important thing, the uses are now like the, I don't know, fourth or fifth most important thing. Because we're focused on the idea of character, you're able to not only separate things based on uses. Now, there are some cases in which it's important or useful to separate based on uses, and you'll see in each of these different character districts, you'll have certain uses that are allowed. But when you focus on the idea of character, and that's really the way a person experiences the city, you know, any place you are, you're not really thinking about what the use is unless it's some sort of giant factory or whatever. The way I always think about it is in downtown, in every city, think of the number of things that happened in every single one of those buildings over time. Buildings were built to house commerce, to house people, or whatever the case may be, but it wasn't built for a specific purpose oftentimes. And so they're able to be flexible, which also is great because over time, as you grow and evolve, as preferences change around the country and here locally, then those buildings are actually able to be transformed as well and to be used in a lot longer period of time instead of just discarded and kind of run down. So the uses are all in there. And then we'll also be, you know, you'll see things like different building types. And so in each of the different character areas, certain building types are allowed. And here the standards for each of those building types are set up. You'll start to see this idea of the frontage, and that's a really important part of character. That's how the building addresses the street. Most often you can think about that as kind of like what's happening on the first floor, not what the use is, but how, like what's going on. So here's an example of a, you know, in the commercial area, a shop front would be what that frontage type would be, or a gallery, you may say in a residential area, a porch would be the frontage type, or a stoop could be a frontage type. And so each of these has their own standards that go along with them, and those standards are based on these areas that we did our synoptic surveying in as well. Everybody said these are our favorite places, and so the commentary is, if these are your favorite places, should you continue that development pattern to make more things that will be your favorite one day? It's kind of the idea, not that it has to look just like the favorite places, but the ideas and the inspiration come from there. Then we also get into specifics about thoroughfares, roads that go through for development parcels, so bigger developments, and all those standards are set up, and so we've been coordinating with engineering and public works to make sure those work well. And then you see our civic space types, and this is something that's really important because we in every city we work in, one of the things that the general public always says is we want more open space in development, but that's kind of the extent of that comment. It's just more open space, and so we'll start to see that, and I don't know if y'all have ever seen this in developments that have come before you, where it's just kind of like whatever land is left over, and that's the open space. And so, you know, there's a sinkhole here and a drainage way over there and a whatever the case may be, right? And so how usable is that open space, right? Oh, there we go. Okay. So apparently I come on a common thread here. Again, like I said, we get to work in a lot of places, and most of the issues are the same. And so, in order to address that issue, we talk about open space or civic space in specific terms. You have parks, plazas, greenways, whatever, and they all have specific standards about what they need to be, what they need to be like, and where they need to be. And so the idea of it just kind of like whatever's left over, no man's land, it doesn't really help anybody. And so that's the thing that you'll see there. And as I mentioned, your sign standards are article, and so we go through each of the different signage types. And as you see in these you see this repeating throughout these different pages I'm showing you, even though they're from different sections. These are the character districts that they're allowed in, and so that's kind of the thing that goes on and on throughout, and specific standards for them, and always making it be more graphical. So next steps, we have the public review period. So this document that you all have before you, and is now available to the community through October 13th for public comment, and then additional revisions will be made as we get input from all of you and from the community. And then then we'll embrace and head on into the official process. So all the things that I've talked to you about that we've done so far are all in addition to the normal process, the official review process that a zoning ordinance update would typically go through. So hopefully, by having it be so robust and all, and having so many opportunities for the community to give input, talking to all you a lot of times, that the adoption process will be really smooth, and you all won't have to just spend nights and nights staying up until 2 in the morning, being concerned about this measurement or that measurement. And because it's all based on those synoptic surveys, and unless you have, since we did our Planapalooza and done work afterwards, changed what you love most about the city, then we're gonna hopefully have hit it out of the park. So this presentation and the document will be available at www.columbiaforyou.com. And when you have comments, if you've reviewed it, send them to Paul. So his web address or email address is there, paul@columbiatn.com. And then he'll assemble all of those, staff will assemble all of those and get them to us to start to make the final version of the document ready to go for adoption. So that's that. Open up to questions, comments, concerns. I'm not sure hold on one second, I'm not sure what the protocols are, procedures, because we've got audience, we've got you guys, so I can do it however, whatever the process is, but I'm not from here, so I don't know. So.
Well, Brian, I think the meeting today is for the planning commission and for the council, so if there's any members of the council or the planning commission that would like to. I know I've got a question right off the bat. Could you elaborate a little bit more between what the difference would be between the current PUD zoning that we have in place and what this is proposed PUD zoning?
Sure. You want to take that?
Yeah.
Well, by the way, this is Bill Wright. I guess y'all saw him the other day. This is our main code writer.
So the existing PUD districts, there are a number of them, but each one of them counts on a very subjective negotiated process to get to the end. They don't really have standards of their own. It's like you come in and you negotiate. You might have some use standards, but it requires a lot of development review by both bodies here. The way the new code is set up, well, first of all, any PUD that is approved already on the ground and approved, it stays just like it is. It's like until somebody tears down what was there, it'll be there and go under the old standards. The new code has 2 PUD possibilities, one of them being for a residential possibility, one of them being for a mixed use possibility. The standards for qualifying for a PUD are much more rigorous than they were before. It can't just be, well, I just didn't want to use one of your regular districts. I want to do what I want to do. And so there are standards that go with them. And and it's sort of the price of entry into the PUD land is, it's gotta be something that can't be done under one of the existing districts. It's a very rigorous standard. So,
More or less a variance to a true variance type zoning, since it's something that couldn't be done.
It's not hardship based, but you have to, which a variance technically is, but
Well,
it,
maybe
but
it's not the
literally,
word I use, but right.
yeah, but literally, it's a rare exception that you would use a PUD, approach.
And I didn't say this in the presentation, but a lot of the cities that we work in literally do away with the PUD as even an option. And said, well, we went to all the trouble to write a zoning ordinance that, accomplishes the community's vision and is in sync with the comprehensive plan. And so there may be things that you need to ask for a variance for, specifically in your development because of X, Y, and Z on the particular parcel you have. But the idea of doing something completely different becomes unnecessary. And so in those places that we've worked, they've said, let's just do away with it. Here, because you all use them so frequently, we didn't necessarily take that route. Yes.
Will we be getting a zoning map?
Yes.
But it's not in here now.
Correct.
Right, it just stays separate from the code.
Okay,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
and, because I see a lot, this is permitted in here, so it's like I have to find open space, or it's permitted here, and here.
Yeah.
All right, but I still will be able to find the zoning map
Yes,
and see what's the zoning map and find in here what I can do in that zone, right?
that's correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, and again, in some cases, we literally don't release the zoning map until after the zoning ordinance is adopted. Because what happens so often is as soon as somebody sees a color on a map on a particular piece of property, they, oh, that zoning district, oh, I don't like that standard, I don't like this, I don't like that. And so it really becomes then a discussion about what color, where that color is on the map, rather than how the zoning system how it's set up, does that make sense, and does it reflect the community vision for the future? But we have a zoning map we're working
Well,
on.
what I'm getting at is, we got a lot of people coming in from out of town, they're looking at our zoning maps, or they find a piece of property, what they want, they look at the zone, I don't like the way that's zoned, I'm gonna try to change it to
Yeah.
fit my scenario. With this process here, that's supposed to eliminate a lot of the, I guess, subjectivity that they gonna have.
It is, but it's not gonna change the zoning process though. The zoning, anybody can always come in and ask for a zoning change.
Okay.
But the choices they have will be among those that are in there, which are, each district has standards and these bodies don't have to, it's like, it doesn't say, gotta do this in harmony with that. There's none of that kind of, do y'all know what each of the others mean by harmony? I don't even know what that means. Harmony to me is something that happens in music, but it's not really a very good legal term. But your rezoning process, it counts on the legislative body to look at a piece of property and say, yes, that was either a mistake when it was zoned that way or not, or the comp plan says that this ought to be in this particular category. And so that process won't change. So you may have somebody come in and say, I want to put a bowling alley over here where it's single family residential right now. And then it's up to you guys to decide whether that's what happens. Paul, do you know when we're gonna be releasing the zoning map? Like, I know there's still some tweaks that we haven't even identified, so we won't in today.
Right, yes, sir, I think we're still just making sure the conversion, so I guess that's the other factor of it too, is to keep in mind that we're just doing a conversion. So what it is today, we're just basically converting it into the new terminology, so the rights and uses are gonna be very similar to what's there, and actually you'll have more rights for most of it. And so
the emphasis is on the design of the lot itself and its relationship to the street, not so much like Ryan said as the use, but they will have the same uses, if not more, based on the conversion, so.
Yeah, and also what we have been seeking to do is, and sort of making sure that, the sort of the future land use and all that stuff that's in the comprehensive plan is syncing up with, you know, what's going on in the zoning map, as well. So it's like, you know, again, that comprehensive plan, that vision document that has been in place for a while, you know, that, becomes important, through the process as people look to do something different.
All right, one more question. All right, they come to us and we just know that is not a good project. It's just, we just don't like it, we don't want it in Columbia, but is there still a, and if they're following all the rules, but my gut says it's bad, there's no way around it, is there? I mean, do we still have the ability to?
If they're following.
That's why we like PUDs.
Yeah, right.
But PUDs have a cost. They're
Yeah.
convenient for just like saying, no, I don't want you here. But they're not so convenient for having a good development outcome, because every piece is negotiated in it.
It could be a really great project in a PUD, or it could be a really bad project
Yeah.
in a PUD. I mean, you say, well, we wouldn't let a bad one through. Well, you know, that's kind of like, what you all may think it's not good, but somebody else may in the future. So the way that the zoning is set up, as long as they're following the required submittal requirements, you don't get bad projects anymore. And that's the thing about it. So, you know, staff will be able to say, oh, no, you didn't follow the requirements.
Comply.
You're not in
Yeah.
compliance, so try, you know, y'all won't even see it until it comes in and it's good.
Are you sure of that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the way it's written.
We are really.
As long
We are
as
sure.
they're gonna send people back and say, you know, we got this checklist and they didn't follow it, you know, I mean, it's,
What if it comes down to material and design?
That's it, that's in your.
it's in there.
It's- I hadn't looked at it.
Yeah, yeah, no, of course, yeah, we know y'all just
We just
literally
need
just
y'all
got your hands
forming
on
it.
it.
So
so-
material and design, that's the thing that I wish they could control more instead of coming to us. No, we don't want, no, we don't want that right there.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I always say too is, when you're in a place like this where you're growing a lot, and you're, you know, very popular and people wanna do stuff, you're in a great position to not have to be shy about having rigorous standards, you know? And that's the thing, like when you're at a point where you're like, oh man, I really wish we could get some development here. And then you're like, oh, there's a developer, come on, please, yes, roll out the red carpet. But here, I always say, if you want to make sure you're having thoughtful growth, not to stop it or anything else, but if you're in a position, you're fortunate enough like y'all are, to be able to, you know, make some serious standards and requirements, it's a great way to get a hold of that growth, because you don't have everybody and, you know, whoever thought about being a developer just coming in to give you guys what they gave every other town. Because right now, you guys have, you're very unique, right? That's the thing, y'all got this authenticity, that's why people wanna be here. It's not just an affordability thing or whatever, it's like y'all got some cool stuff going on. But what I find is like, the cool new restaurant in Nashville or whatever, they kinda like, they're like skipping Franklin now and coming on down, right? And that's pretty awesome. And so thinking about, you know, being in that position, you wanna make sure that you're holding on to that authenticity. And that new development actually adds to the overall image and character of the city, you know? And a lot of development that we see all around the country doesn't do that, you know? It just adds rooftops, but it's not anything specific to this place. It's not unique to you, you know?
All right, I'm hearing and other people are hearing, the townhomes. I mean, we're struggling with them. We're getting covered up with them. In your opinion, what I've heard from other people that live in other towns, when the townhomes come in, when things start to change, economy, town, whatever, the townhomes are the first thing that goes down. Because you can't change them, they're there. You can't, it's hard to modernize them, how to make them look better, because, you know, it's a townhome, it's only 20 feet wide. What's y'all's opinion on the townhomes?
Well,
I know they have a use,
Yeah.
and don't say they got a use, yeah, they have a part, but, you know, we're getting hundreds and hundreds of townhomes. And people are telling us that, you know, when I go back to my town up north, the townhomes have gone, they're depressed, they're terrible now, like, we don't want them, or we
Yeah.
shouldn't have gotten them.
Well,
So now,
I think when somebody tells you that story, you should say, when were those townhomes that are depressed, when were they built? Because if you think about places that you might go on vacation, assuming you don't just go to the mountains or the beach, you might go to a place that is a town or a city. What you tend to find is that there are townhouses, but they're part of a town, and that's the difference. We have people coming in and using this typology of the single-family house, maybe fee simple, which has shared walls or whatever, but they're building them in this strange suburban way that is a modern invention, and they just put the parking lot out front of them, and they're in the middle of nowhere, and it's all just townhouses just like them, and they just repeat. Whereas the townhouses that you see, some of the most expensive real estate in the country is in Georgetown, right outside of DC, where all the senators and Congress people live and all that. And it's like the predominant building type there are row houses, townhouses, but they're all built in a way that reflects like the parts of the city that people love the most, even here. Y'all don't have a tradition of them, or those that you maybe once had are gone now. But in places where they're built as a part of a real town, they hold their value and increase their value over time. It's the type of townhouse development that you're getting that's the problem.
well, when you came to your last one, you said townhome, that has the name, town.
Yeah, oh,
And
there you go.
so, I mean, that's where they should be.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that I see, we see more than anything right now, and so this should help. That's just my opinion, there's a lot of people over here.
Yeah.
I think the other thing you'll see, when we hear, people have concerns about townhomes, it's typically with what they look like and what they are and what character they don't have.
Right.
And this document will assure that the townhomes have the character you're looking for too. It won't be just whatever somebody just can come up there and slap up there and say, yeah, it's got a bathroom and a living room and, you know.
Awesome.
So,
Well, hey, this sound like the document we need.
That's what we're shooting for.
Hey, thank you.
What exactly is a density unit? Is that one household? Is that something we define?
No, it is defined in there. It can also mean a certain number of square footage of a commercial use, the way it's laid out. There's a table in there that has this unit equivalency in it.
Okay. So haven't found that yet.
For what it's worth though, as you're looking and thinking about density, what I always say is density is one of those sort of abstract terminologies, abstract concepts where people have said, well, we're getting these townhouses we don't like, or multifamily we don't like, or whatever the case may be. How many units is that per acre? Okay, that's not good. That units per acre number, that density isn't good. Well, when you go to, again, these places that everybody loves, these most of the time historic places, what you see is that you have no idea what the density is. The only way to figure out density in a lot of cases is to go count meters or count mailboxes, because you'll see that the character of the buildings fits in. You'll have a multifamily building that's got 6 or 8 units right next to a single family house that's $1 million or whatever, and they don't have a negative impact on the price of them. And so when you're if you're used to thinking about density as something that's important, it tends to not be important when you're talking about character. So that's something to keep in mind. But most places we work have density as a concept, and so we kind of bring it forward.
And most of the districts that are in here do have a density max in them that's essentially brought forward from the districts that were converted into these new districts. Some of them you'll see don't have a density cap on them, but most of them do.
On that note, I think, I'm sorry, you're done.
Well, with that question, my only other one is, can we make sure that on the zoning map, anything that doesn't already have a mobile home on it, it doesn't have the mobile home park designation? I don't think we need to transfer that one forward, since someone wants to apply for that change, they can.
Right, so mobile home park is actually a district.
Right.
A mobile home sitting on a lot is not a district.
Well, I don't, if there's any districts that are planned to be transferred forward from one zone to the other, I think we should take a look at that first and make sure if it's it's not already got one built on it, it doesn't need to.
And I don't know,
move
Paul,
forward.
do you know of any, mobile home park districts that are just approved as that, but they don't have mobile home parks existing on them?
We have some non-conforming ones that were done, back, well, I guess 30, 40 years ago.
Mhm.
Some that were annexed in even before that, that are sitting there, most of them are pretty small, but they don't actually have a mobile home park zoning sitting on top of them.
So they would have different zoning now if they're not
That's right.
conforming,
Yeah.
so I think the answer is, that's being done.
So then
Well, I
you.
mean, we had one last week in the planning commission that its existing zoning was for mobile homes. It's empty land right now, it hasn't ever been developed, but it's got the mobile home park zoning.
I see.
Right, there is maybe one or two that are vacant, that they haven't developed anything, that are sitting out there. I guess the only side to think about is you, to be safe, you almost need the owner of that property to kind of buy in on changing that, but
Yeah.
because we don't want to change the district to the point to where we're taking rights from the
Well,
value.
Yeah, you've also, Tennessee has a really specific non-conforming structure and use, statute, unlike one that I've ever seen in any other state. It is very specific about what can continue and what can't continue. It's very heavily geared in favor of multifamily, dwellings and businesses. So you can see who was at the lobbying table, when they were writing it. And so we're sort of bound by that. If somebody has that use going and it was legal when it was established, then it gets to keep like that until this, that, or the other happens per the state code. If it was illegal when they put it out there, then you don't have to do anything. I mean, you can change it if you want to, but typically it would have been legal. They may have put it on an agricultural lot way back when it said all you could do was plant corn here, but you're gonna be pretty well bound by the non-conforming statute.
So we'll take a look.
Which is brought forward into this code. And it made the code a bunch of more pages longer because we dealt with that.
Yes, I'm here in a second.
Someone back there's gonna hold up their hand all.
I'm in the real estate business.
Okay.
So, and I haven't gotten to study any of your stuff at all, but I've tried to keep up, with going to this area. I'm concerned about, when you say the PUD cured a lot of things around here that people agreed on. I have an office, and it's right across from the hospital, but it's in a residential district. And the only way that I was able to receive zoning was that they had a PUD that I have no retail and only can have an office, in that location.
Yeah.
So, but that's just an example. All through the city, things have been done, and it would be things that were hammered out. I mean, as far as, that some people, maybe didn't want something to happen, but they would agree, to hammer things out. And, like this, as far as I've been kicked around a lot, and I'm really concerned that a lot of people haven't been kicked around a lot, and that your timetable of a month, to move along, scares me. The other thing, that I've thought of, if I gave you a list of 10 pieces of property, and we studied what you could do with them today, and what it would be whenever you had a new zoning district, a new code. I think that would be educational, and it really maybe ought to be more than 10 properties, where you can, understand, like right now, I mean, what we've got is not perfect, but there has been, like I'm just saying, there's been a lot of treaties that have been made around here, and I don't think, I guess it's been, time gets away, maybe 12 years ago, we started having a new zoning plan. We all aware of that. We had somebody the Columbia Zoning is what it was.
Mhm.
And pretty much on that it was, looked at to me like pretty much the planner could decide, you know, whatever was right and whatever was proposed on that one. And we were lucky that it didn't ever go into existence. But I'm just saying that I really am concerned that if we rush this, because, see, things are busy here. And people are able to tell people, you know, like, if the planner doesn't, if the council and the planning commission doesn't want townhouses or apartments, they have to, in most cases, it's rezoning. As far as they don't have to have it. I mean, it's not, it's, I mean, you know, like, you know, I've done some stuff in Spring Hill lately, and I got turned in on it, and it was just, you know, it's just the way it was. I mean, as far as, so I really feel like that's what we're not looking at from Mr. McBroom is, in a lot of cases, they can say no. They haven't said no as a group here. You know, things have been pretty much approved, you know, me watching as far as.
Yeah.
So,
Well, one thing to clarify though is you have a month for the additional public comment period to review the document, get your comments in, and then the normal adoption process begins. And so there'll be public hearings and all that stuff as well that you can, you know, give comment during that period.
I'm just saying, with me having experience, you give me a 500-page document in a zoning map that you don't really want to give us. You know, you said, I'd really like to not use it as a.
Oh, no, I just said we do that
You didn't
sometimes.
say that.
I said we've done that in the
You didn't say
past,
that.
yeah.
You said that.
Yeah, we got the
You
film.
got tape.
Yeah, that's right.
The zoning map goes along with this code through the adoption process.
Correct.
It is you do a both together.
I'm just saying to you is that things are running smoothly here right now compared to, I mean, the city's doing what they want to do. I'm just saying they're basically approving anything that is, you know, within reason, you know, as far as.
Okay, so one thing that's not taken into account is that the city came together and did a comprehensive plan.
Correct.
And it said what the city wanted to do, and the existing code has nothing to do with the comp plan. It is diametrically opposite
I don't know,
the
but
comp
what I'm just
plan.
saying is, whatever you're saying is, I don't know, I mean, this is complicated. And I'm just saying to you is that, you know, it needs to go slow, and you need to give us a zoning map, and you need to take at least 10 or 20 properties, now you furnish them to you, and give me an idea of what you can do with them after you put it in. And, you know, do you have an example of a city that would be 100% like what you've done for us?
We do.
If I could get that, I'd like to talk to some real estate people.
Yeah, that's fine. And at the end of the day, it'll be up to, you know, all of them to decide how long the period, I mean, thus far, that's what has been, you know, our directive. And, but, you know, I think in going through the process, I mean, that's why it's been a 1.5 year long process thus far with the Planapalooza and the workshops and, you know, all of the things that have come before. And then, you know, having a month or so to study it, you know, and then the official adoption process. So, you know, this is the process that's been set up thus far, and it can be changed, you know, if they choose to do so. So, thank you for your input. So, they gotta go first.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
Yes.
I didn't know y'all were supposed to ask all your questions first. And
Yes.
then, so I saw the gentleman, and I said, he's been holding up his hand. And sorry, I breach protocol like that from time to time, always unintentionally though.
So my question was on maybe just a brief walkthrough, like the first one in the section 4 is CD2, which is the rural characteristic district. And the first item listed is that density, as Mr. Hutto asked about, but it says one density unit per 5 acres max. That may be a typo, because when I looked over here on the chart, I think it says one density unit per 1 acre max. So I'm not sure, I guess I was just getting a little confused.
Well,
Could be a typo.
that we've already caught that, but thank you. If you are that good looking at that,
You're the official editor. You have the editor position. Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, that's why we release this thing at this stage, rather than just saying, "Hey, go adopt it now; it's ready to go." You know,
Yeah.
so it's a big fat document, and there are probably misspelled words in there too. So.
I
But-
hope not.
So on that, the density includes those, like I was reading over here, so it includes your thoroughfares and other areas and stuff. So it's not just the lot size. So you have lot size, I guess, is defined more over here under lot occupation.
That's
I
right.
got you. Got it. Just wanna make sure I'm
That's
following
right.
the flow. Thanks.
And the thing that's good about it is too, you know, once you kind of get your mind around the first one, because they all follow the same system, you go like, oh, okay, now I get it. And the more you look at it, I always say when you read it the first time, you know, have a highlighter out, just so for big ideas. You know, the second time you're gonna get out a pencil, and then the third time you can get out your red pen. So.
And I actually always tell people to do it the opposite way. I tell them to leave the pencil line down on the table and read through it so they can understand the concepts as they're going through.
Oh yeah, don't do anything the first. That's
Yeah,
right. Read it.
don't do
Read it
anything the first read.
Now, this is online, correct?
Yeah.
It will be.
It will be, so Mr. Hill can look at it.
In the next few days.
I like to get a look on the whole man.
Right, you're like me. I mean, if he did wanna get one, how could he get one, or?
I'm not sure.
Well, I certainly know that the city can't afford to have every person.
Oh, yeah, you're
have
right.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times there'll just be like a hard copy available at the, you know, at City Hall for people to look at.
They didn't even
whenever.
make me one. I had to make my own
Yeah.
copy.
So. But you can just email Paul.
But there should be, Paul, there really should be
We
a
do,
copy
and what was the-
available.
It was, we just looked at whatever we had printed up, you know,
Yeah.
outside of us because of the sheer volume of
Yeah.
pages and number of copies, but whatever the cost was to us, that's
Yeah.
what we'll pass on, but, the online version is probably a lot easier than actually the.
And a lot of
hard
times
copy.
it is. A lot of
True.
times it is.
That was bulk pricing too, cause we did the large number of them.
Yeah.
But if somebody wants to just come and like look at a hard copy at
Oh,
City
yes,
Hall. then
definitely,
just-
for sure, oh, yeah.
They don't
We'll
wanna-
always have a hard copy of
Yeah.
the file ready to be looked at.
When does the map get released?
Yeah,
They
we've got
were
the
just
map,
doing a file
which is
check.
straight conversion. We were just going through and checking to make sure the conversion looked correct.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely, we'll have a map out before too long. And there again, it kinda goes back to that conversion, that's why we just wanna make sure, cause the conversion is looking at entire parcels, where our city is unique in a way that our lines have changed a lot over the last 40, 50 years, so there's some split zonings in some places that we just wanna make sure we're capturing those.
I was gonna say, you've got a zoning map right
Yeah.
there. I thought maybe you had an early copy of the new one.
Hey, that's the old.
And we need to do some work on like clipping it, so like if the portion of a parcel is in the city and a large portion is outside of the city, because of the way it works, they're doing it parcel by parcel. It looks like that entire parcel is zoned when in fact it's not even in the city.
Well, pieces,
Right,
300
just
feet
to-
of it might be in the
Yeah,
city.
just the
Yeah.
300 feet along, National Highway or whatever.
We haven't annexed any property that didn't already have a designation to it, have we? You know, we just annexed to be annexing.
What do you mean by that?
You know, everything we annex has, usage on it right then.
Well, yes, sir, so you're setting the zone when you annex it, and you're referring to the comp plan as far as what zones are allowable.
Right, there's nothing out there that we, since I've been doing it, we haven't annexed like 100 acres, that's a good 100 acres, let's go ahead and annex it to the city.
No, so we're not allowed to do that anymore, state law
Okay.
requires that either a referendum, which we don't really wanna get into, I think, as a whole, but, it has to be petitioned by the owner to be
Okay,
annexed.
you're right.
Anybody else?
Can I ask one more clarification?
Sure.
On like just in these districts, I'm just kinda learning this stuff, so as it gets into these more like urban character districts and stuff, does the lots kinda get less being defined by size and more defined by like the building that's going on there?
No, it's really, sort of, yes, but really, it's all really being defined by the lot width. When you come down to it, the lot width is what starts making character different. Because if you have smaller lots, it is much more walkable and much more pedestrian scale. And if you have big old giant lots, it quits being either of those.
But to your point, I mean, if there's a wide range from small to large in a more urban area, you can see that the lot width isn't the distinguishing characteristic per se of that character area, and it may be more based on the building type. So I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, I mean, that,
So like where it says house,
Yeah.
38-foot minimum if alley loaded, that means the lot can be 38 feet, or
Mhm.
the house gets to be 38.
Yep.
The lot has to be
The
38.
lot.
The lot, gotcha.
you are one fast study. For you to have asked me a building type question related to a lot area question is like, that's catching it.
That's not normal, just so y'all know. Anybody who's not there yet, don't
be
think that.
intimidated by how quick you
Right.
talk about these terms.
Most of these employees are president of the planning commission.
Ah, that's right, that's right.
I'll forget it tomorrow.
Yeah. You like Dory.
I would add that also engineering is updating subdivision regulation standards to mimic a lot of these requirements. Some of these requirements are direct relation to what they've already been working on, and copies and some of that. So along with this document, you'll also be seeing subregs to match it.
Two documents. The subregs will be really simple, and that, really all that's dealing with is the process of just legally subdividing a piece of land. And then we'll have a separate document that's more of the engineering standards. And currently we kind of have them sandwiched together, and it's one large, unnecessarily large document, and we'll split those apart. So the subregs will basically just be procedural. This is what needs to happen to divide a piece of land, and go from there. And then the engineering standards is, everything that needs to go into actually building it and developing it.
Yeah, also it's some of the design, somewhere throughout the years, little bits and pieces of design standards for site and subdivisions and things have been kind of incorporated into subregs, which we're getting those out. That's really not the purpose of a subdivision regulation. As Douglas stated, we're just talking about division of property within those regulations. Just now we're trying to have the document that has all the design standards into one document so that it's working together and easy to find for somebody. Instead of looking through 2 or 3 different documents to find what they gotta do on a certain project.
And because they kind of reflect between each other as, a different orientation of a design standard, instead of sort of piling everything on you all at once, get the zoning comments and get all of that settled and defined, and then have the engineering standards on a little bit more of a technical side reflect the zoning code.
This doesn't change the procedure at all, does it? The way that the rezoning process works, where it comes through planning commission and then just.
All the same.
Okay.
The admin portion, which is I think in 8, I believe, toward the back, is pretty much a straight mimic from your current ordinance.
So I see we have a question in the crowd. Are y'all ready for some more from the public? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Is the Historic Zoning Commission also been included in this procedure manual book?
It's exactly the
It
same
is,
as where it
right.
is. Yes,
And-
ma'am, so.
And I have, and I apologize for this a little bit, it's been since July since I was in this document, and I've actually been in a couple of other, cities' zoning ordinances since then, and just recently, that the city I was working in, they said, no, we don't want it in there, we want it over here somewhere else. I was gonna say yes, but I had to ask Paul to make sure I was
Yes, ma'am,
right.
so the creation of the district and the powers of the,
Yeah.
the creation of the commission.
Right.
And the powers of the commission are
Yeah.
inside this book, but the
Yeah.
guidelines themselves are actually a standalone set.
That's right.
That they have currently, so we're not touching anything with historic
Yeah.
guidelines
Yeah.
per se. And the powers of the board is exactly the same.
Well, once this is adopted or finalized, will that cut down on all these amendments that we have going on all the time?
It should cut down on a lot of them initially. There will, one of the things, Brian, you didn't have the slide. I did a draft of this presentation, and Brian took this slide out just a little while ago. One of the things it said was, no zoning code is perfect.
Oh, yeah.
This one is way the heck better than where you were, and you will learn things by using it. And, you know, after a year goes by, then maybe you have staff look at it and say, here are the things that we're having issues with. You're gonna have far fewer issues with it.
Yeah, typically you do some sort of a cleanup after, you know, you've lived with it for a little while, but I mean, at the end of the day, what we always say is, if you're ever attempting to make a perfect document before you release it and adopt it, then what's gonna happen is you're gonna spin your wheels over a long time, and in the meantime, development's coming in, because they're not waiting on you guys to make up your mind about stuff. And so, we generally recommend that you move forward the document with the intent of doing some cleanup, you know, when you realize that there's something needs to be tweaked, so.
And I think to add to that is that most of the amendments that you see are rezonings, which you still have the right to request for a rezoning of property. The difference in this document is the uses are opened up a little bit more. So where your current zoning ordinance is very tight in what you can do in certain districts, this one allows a bit more in each district and focuses, like we were talking about earlier, just more about how it's constructed and how it sits on the site. So it should actually cut those back some because the allowances are already going to be in place.
Yes, ma'am.
This might actually just be a question for Paul, but
Sure.
you mentioned a public copy. Is that gonna be available in developmental services, or can we actually put a copy in the library so he could access it with more hours?
Yes, I mean, it'll be
If
available.
somebody needs to pay for that, I don't mind paying for printing, but it
Right.
needs to be accessible to people.
Yes, so it's always available at our office. The online version is where it's out, open 24/7. So whenever somebody needs one, we'll have it
Okay.
available. Like I said, the online version is just searchable, and to be such a large document, sometimes people can just kind of key in on a few things and kind of get from there.
Right. But so there will be one available at developmental services then?
Development services.
Yeah.
Developmental is something I've had issues with for a long time. Yes, yes,
Okay.
oh, yes, ma'am.
That's what I was trying to
Oh,
get,
yes.
is where will those be?
All the time, all of our documents are available at development services.
Yes, sir.
I just want to clarify the dates. When will it be available online?
It should be in the next few days. I think we're gonna try and get it up online tonight, but sometimes the website.
But we only have a month to review it from now, but it's not
From
available yet.
when it gets up online. You guys will have a month once it gets up online.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that'll include the map too, because the map's part of the document. That's what he had said.
It won't
It won't?
tonight.
No.
We know that Paul and I are not gonna have that finished tonight.
I understand. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to figure out timing here.
And I'd say
That we do have adequate.
we're gonna be getting the map up there with all due haste.
Yeah, I guess the key point is, I mean, everybody's kind of focusing on the October 13th date, but what was said earlier, the commissions are what control the pace of this document. That's not necessarily, we're just putting, the worst thing that we've seen in the past is a document that stalls. And if it stalls, it just starts to die, and then it just never goes anywhere. We've had that past experience, and that's what we don't want. So, definitely, we're just asking that if you have comments, please get them to us by that October 13th. Doesn't mean that you cannot add those comments later, or talk to a council member or your planning commission member and still add more comments later.
And then going back to procedures, so does that mean it'll be before the planning commission for approval at the November planning commission meeting?
We would like to, but that is up to the planning
If
commission.
it were to follow the course, and then they
Yes.
would have to have 2 readings in front of council, so under the most expedited fashion, January of 2022 would be the second reading of the ordinance.
Right. What we're gonna do is just basically at the, get a feel if everybody's comfortable with it or not in October session, and if they'd like for us to add it into November's agenda.
And understand, I'm just saying, I realize there's a tremendous outpouring from the community to to be here tonight. But I just wanna make sure that those of us that are here know, you know, what we can do, you know, and how we're, you know, timing our work to make sure that we're moving it ahead.
Fair enough. Well, and the good thing is, even if the map is delayed by a few days, reviewing the text will take you, before the colors on the map mean anything to you, you wanna start with the text, right? And so that'll give you a good minute to study it.
First thing I'm gonna look at is my lot.
No, yeah, you will, but you won't know what it means. You won't know what it means, cause it's just a color.
It's purple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think yours is an aqua.
Nope.
Well,
However, I won't change
What does that mean?
the historical, but if I would ever change the property, would it not change the historical allowed uses of my property? There are certain things in my PUD that are not allowed.
We're not changing,
Motorcycle shop
we're
is
not
not
changing any existing PUD.
Yeah, if you've got a PUD in place
We're not
already,
changing
that's,
any existing PUDs.
yeah.
You could do a small engine.
Unless you want to.
You can do a motorcycle shop.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, your master plan is what you have now.
Yeah.
It is just what you have
That's
now,
right.
it's not changing.
Once you see the new zoning, you may go, man, this is way better than my PUD. Can I go ahead and get in on that?
That's why I might be interested.
So the key provision to you, if you're in an existing PUD, is a provision that says all existing PUDs stay in effect just like they are per their original approval.
Okay, but in clarification, that's only PUDs that were, if you're in a zone that's zoned for a PUD, which all the corridor coming through, you know, requires, even if you have to have built based on your PUD
No.
in order to maintain
Not on that point.
Okay, so the properties across the road that are PUD, commercial PUD, or whatever, are
If
still.
it's the same PUD, it's the same PUD. If it's a different PUD, but it exists, it's the same PUD.
Okay.
You know.
All right,
We're just not-
that's why I'm
we're not-
asking the questions, to make
Yeah,
sure.
we're not changing existing PUD property.
In the historical district, it's come before us a couple of times, townhomes in the historical district. And taking 2 lots and making six lots out of it, you know. One of them was a duplex. And this was voted down mostly because it wasn't conducive to the neighborhood. So historical still have the authority to do that?
So in the historical district, if it's a designated historical district, it still has to comply with their separate design and historical standards, which are not, we did not bring them forth here, but they exist, and they aren't being touched at all by this. So if something's in a historical district, it's still got to comply with those.
It's, we're whispering like a bunch of little kids.
It's all right.
And I'll ask the question. So the RS6 and RS10 now becomes CD3, or you have a conversion table?
Yeah, that's what I want.
There is
Well,
one.
There is one in there?
But, no, there's not one in there, no, because we don't talk about the old zones in there, because they're not applicable anymore, except for the existing PUDs.
Well, I know it, but I'm just saying, you know, so that's why we need the map, I guess. That's why everybody's in it, so we can look at the map.
All right, so the
See how it
presentation.
applies to this, and
The
then,
presentation that we've run through a couple of times, it has the conversions in it, but there is a conversion.
yeah, I like that.
But there is a conversion table that we can.
But it was, it's not in here. What you had up there was perfect. I love that.
Well, but again, what was the law is irrelevant to what is the law once it's adopted.
But you gave the example, this right here should be called, the RS6 was I'm
Yeah,
mixed up,
yeah,
urban.
yeah.
Right. So I kinda, I like, now I know what's going on, so
Yeah.
it kinda helps us see now the CD3, so,
Well, that said though, I mean, what we've done is we've looked at, in the translation, we've looked at what uses, setbacks, general, like, as best you can infer character from the existing ordinance, which it wasn't intended to be. We've brought that forward and extrapolated that into one of the character districts. What you will see though if you were looking closely as I flipped through them, which I'm sure you didn't because I didn't even point it out, but the several of the existing zoning districts actually appear under multiple categories of new character based on where they are geographically within the city as well. And so understanding looking at what your understanding of that current zoning district is may actually just confuse you as you're trying to think about it.
But we're more than happy
Yeah,
to
you can-
hand you the conversion.
I mean, just, if you can, and then something like, and then so this new map that we're getting will have CD3 areas, none of the RSs or anything.
It won't have any,
Okay, all right, that's it.
they're gone.
Cause I mean, there's something I saw on the CD3, a 65-foot lot. You know, hey, we're getting, they want to put in 50s to come with the PUD.
One thing I tell you, is that, the planning staff has been meticulous in its review of each metric of each of these districts as they related to the old districts. And I'm telling you, and they're laughing.
More so than normal, by the way.
More than any planning staff they've ever dealt with, they've been meticulous. And we love them for it.
And, you know, in fact, one of the most beneficial things you may do is go sit down with them in their office rather than you trying to study that table, go through, because they have looked at it from the same perspective that you're looking at it. They understand the new and the old, in a way that they can say, well, if you think about it like this, I think that may be helpful, not to just schedule a bunch of meetings, but.
Well, this is what, I mean, like, they're over here now, this is, we gotta do this here. Is there another meeting setting up after we look at this that we get to sit down and talk to you, Paul, or to you? Or it's all, we email them or we text them?
However he wants to do
You're
it.
more welcome to come and sit with us or set up time, come sit with us anytime, that you like, just let us know. Go through it.
I would encourage you, we said it a little bit jokingly a little while ago, to go through it and try to get the big picture out of it first.
Your best understanding.
Your best understanding of the big picture, because you can pick up any one page and go bam, and you're not gonna understand how that fits into the whole big structure of the thing.
We were guilty of that ourselves, so that's why he.
That is not why I said that.
We questioned some things pretty quickly, only to find out, oh, I see why you did it when you look at how it relates in some of the other areas throughout the book, so.
Well, and the thing about it, as I said in the presentation too, you know, one of the points is to make it more user-friendly, easier, and et cetera. But it's a zoning ordinance nonetheless, right? And so just no matter what, unless we are able to do the most boiled down, simple zoning ordinance you've ever seen, it takes a minute, right? You're learning like a whole new operating system. Y'all have just gone from your Windows PC to a Mac, or vice versa, you know? And so you're gonna have to figure out what right-click means, you know?
That's why we call Paul.
Yeah, exactly. He's your IT guy, right?
Yeah, that's why we started having study sessions.
Yeah.
It makes it a whole lot easier.
Yeah, no, so, but don't get frustrated though. I mean, like I said, if just remember when you first got in any of your positions and they handed you the zoning ordinance that said, learn this, and you're like, ugh, you know, whoa. Yeah, so
Actually, pretty sure probably not many of y'all actually read the zoning ordinance when you got in your position.
that's typical.
College was a long time ago.
Yep, so. All right, anybody else?
This may be a question for Paul, but it sounds to me like this right here could take, you know, especially things where we talk about rural countryside today, and it's got a very broad zoning from like RS10 to RS40 or something along that lines. This would drill that down to a much more defined what falls into that category. It's not such a broad range, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I mean, the rural stuff is kind of the rural stuff. It just is. Other categories probably are getting more refined than the rural category is. You use the rural one as an example. It's nearly the easiest one because it's farmhouses and big lots, you know, really big lots, and some agricultural uses, and so it's just not as tightly regulated as other districts are. So it's the other districts, you'll start seeing those metrics start coming forward as probably more clearly when you look at the CD3 and the districts that feed into that, you'll start seeing that, how that is really just easier to follow. To me, it is anyway.
Yeah, we purposely put in there on the beginning of each district, the description related to the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, and yeah, that is one thing that is done. In each narrative description of each district, it literally says, this is the appropriate or an appropriate district for what the comp Wayne calls character area thus and such.
And purposely got away from defining the comprehensive plan by density, and so that's what you
Yeah.
currently have. That's what they were saying earlier, your current zoning ordinance doesn't really work very well with the comprehensive plan and some of the language parts, and that's one of them, is that your current zoning ordinance is all about density, and the comprehensive plan is more about site setting and feel of the area. And so the two aren't working very well, and that's why this one is not really talking about density very much, and the description is just about how it's set on the site.
When we just not to get too deep into it, and I nearly hesitate to say it, but if you think about sort of what the density can be on a site, it's really regulated not by some number that says X numbers of units per acre. It's really governed more by the heights, the setbacks. It's all of those things. You could like dispense with density units altogether, because you got all those other standards that ultimately make it all come out that way. Parking standards, probably the number one thing that limits density, the parking standards. Because you can only park so much on a piece of property. So was that a motion to not have density units?
Does this have anything about the parking standards?
Oh, yeah.
Did it improve them? Or do that have to look into
How
it?
you define and improve them, I mean. It's got everything in there that your other book.
Hampshire Highway Apartments. Did improve it.
Is this video can you watch this video again somewhere?
Yes, we'll check it out. I think it's looking like it's gonna hold together. We'll post it to YouTube, I
Yeah, we'll
believe.
put it on YouTube and let Casey and them post it out.
The actual readability of some of the text on the presentation is probably limited, but we will have the actual presentation available, so you can kind of side load it and look at it as you're watching, perhaps. But yes, it will be available on YouTube.
And we'll put it up on the Columbia for You website as well. And we can also put a PDF of the slides if people wanna look through them.
Oh, okay.
So.
We can actually attach that to the YouTube video.
Awesome. This is great. Thank you. I appreciate y'all's time. I know this is a lot to take in, and looking forward to, as y'all study it, hearing more of your questions about it. And we're ready when y'all are. So let us know.
Brian always gets on me for doing this. He always makes his final comment, and I think that's something that I should have thought of a few minutes ago, and I had to come back to it.
You just
In
go on.
reviewing this document, if you will look at that table of contents and understand how the document is structured first, that's like the very first thing to do. There's a rational way that it's laid out, and you'll be able to take in what you're reading later if you just really get hold of what the skeleton of the document is, that, at least to me.
And if you're confused about something, flip to the back and look and see if it's defined in the
Oh,
definitions.
gosh, yes. Defined terms are capitalized, and so anytime you see capitalized term, you know you need the definition. They're back in the last article under definitions.